Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Check. Yeah. So, okay, now we read verse stanza 4. Verse 4, right? Whenever it says, whenever I see sentient beings who are wicked in nature and overwhelmed by negative actions and heavy suffering, I hold such rare ones dear as if I had found a precious treasure. Right. Okay, so what is this saying? This verse saying is, whenever I see sentient beings, right? Whenever and wherever I see sentient beings who are wicked in nature, who are wicked and what is called sometimes translated as unpleasant, who are unpleasant in nature, right? Unpleasant here refers to whenever I see the being, whenever I see the being whose nature is unpleasant, right? Whose nature is wicked or unpleasant. Wicked or unpleasant here refers to those beings who, for example, like those beings who commit the who commit any actions, with, we call, four binding factors. Okay, four binding factors. Now, what are four binding factors, right? For binding this, in order to, in order for the, in order for the any kind of, for example, like negative actions, any kind of negative actions, to bring that into complete, negative action, to bring that into complete negative action, we need four binding factors, right? These four binding factors are, now what is, first one is, not recognizing wrongdoing as a wrongdoing. Wrongdoing as a wrongdoing. And then the second one is, although you identify the wrongdoing as a wrongdoing, but then you have no wish to stop that. You have no wish to reverse or stop that in a kind of action, negative action. The third one is, after, if you do kind of, for example, any kind of negative actions, if you do out of, we do this negative action out of any kind of negative emotion, right? And then we do this negative action with delight. Number 3, taking delight in the action that you have done, that we are doing, right? And then the fourth one is taking rejoice. If you rejoice for the in the act that you have done, take a rejoice, a sense of satisfaction. This is number 4. So any action, so those beings who commit any action with these 4, with these 4 factors are now called as wicked, or unpleasant in nature. Those beings who are then called as unpleasant in nature, right? But then why these 4 factors come into being? Why these 4 factors come into being is maybe due to habituation. Habituation in this, habituation in committing this negative act or that negative act, right? Again, this acting in such a way is kind of motivated out of, again, delusion, right? Some people have more dominant of attachment, some out of jealousy, and some anger, or some sense of pride. All this delusion, either of the delusion, then commit the act with the 4 factors. So we call as, those beings are called as wicked, then, right? And overwhelmed by negative actions and heavy suffering. Because of this, and then people are, the beings are oppressed by, or overwhelmed by negative actions, right? Negativities, negativities and heavy suffering. Now here, negative actions refers to those some kind of very heavy negative karma, for example, heavy negative karma, which then, because of the accumulation of the heavy negative karma, this negative karma are have enough potential, have very strong potential to throw you out in the lower realm, in the next life, very next life, throw you out in the very next life, in the lower realm. And in this very life, people then go through the different kinds of suffering because of this act, kind of negative act. Then people suffer in this life, both physically and mentally. They suffer, emotionally suffer. Or those negative actions enough to throw you out next life in the lower realm, unfortunate existence. And also, and then there are heavy suffering, refers to those people who is tortured, mentally tortured, or physically tortured, physically going through pain, pain and suffering. For example, like physical suffering, for example, like those people who are going through terminal illness, like the terminal illness, very long prolonged illnesses, right? And then they are suffering there are, for example, like, different kinds of, very painful experience, at physical level, right? Many different kinds of, suffering, the cancer, for example, like AIDS, all this very different. We have different kinds of, different kinds of suffering, and then those suffering which are still, the physical suffering which are still unknown, right? Physical illnesses, or physical sickness, and then there are, we have, suffering at those mental level, those suffering again, caused by many of the suffering, again caused by negative emotions, negative emotions in, and also, we get sickness, right? We get, for example, like, when we have physical, when we have kind of, mental sickness, like stress, depression, and then this, the sense of loneliness, low self-esteem, right? Mm. Uh, uh, all this, all this suffering again, and then because of this, suffering, what really, or, body imbalance, or, uh, uh, the elements in our body become imbalanced. When the elements in our body become imbalanced, we again become physical sick, so many of the physical sickness again caused by, delusion. Very clear, very clear, very clear, right? Very clear, right? So, those, disease, many kinds of, mental, we call it, mental sickness, again, caused by, strong, kind of delusion, right? Strong delusion. And then also, so we are referring to this, sickness. So it includes, very, very serious, suffering, those heavy negative karma, heavy negative action, and heavy suffering, which includes both physical and mental suffering, right? So, as a result of, when we see such a person who is tormented by, physical suffering, mental suffering, when we see those person engaging in such a, heavy negative karma, I hold such rare ones. I hold such rare ones as if I had found a precious treasure. Right. So, if so, this teaching is talking about, there's a, because, there's a great danger that we abandon them, we shun these people, we repel these people, right? So this teaching says, it is not necessary to do all these things, one really need to take a special care of these people, right? As if you have found a precious jewel treasure, as you have found such a really, a precious, treasure, right? Precious treasure. Now here, if you look at this, verse, if you try to, really try to understand, what this is saying, right? This one is saying, right? So otherwise, what really happened is, uh, out of strong, negative impulses, right? Out of strong negative impulses, then, we people, commit a, kind of negative crime, negative kind of action, negative act, negative act, and then because of such, negative act, and then and also then there's a danger that from our side, we There's a danger that we shun these people, right? Now, for example, take a very small example, right? There are, somebody, who commit, for example, like crime, right? Crime. Somebody commit a crime and then go to jail, right? Went to jail, and then that person out of, jail. When that person out of jail, released from the jail, then in the society, then sorry, okay, and then in the society, we try to shun these people, right? Citing a reason that we should not deal with this, persons. This person have, criminal background, not good for us, right? So we tend to say like this, and also prisoner. When the prisoner going through, again, when the prisoner, because of their, because of their nature, again, what we call as, maybe, wicked nature or, unpleasant nature, there's a tendency that we again, try to shun these people, right? Or these people, did this crime and that crime. There's a very great danger, this happening in the society, right? Right. Again, now, for example, yeah, just take an example, so there's some, each person have, a different, some, for example, some person, they, have difficulty accepting in the society, right? Some person have, very, angry, very full of hatred, sometimes become violent, then we say, in the society, they say, right, oh, don't deal with that person. That person can become violent anytime, Be careful dealing with this, We better not deal with that person, We keep distance, shun, repel, right? Oh, right. Again, again, there's some person, who is very, very strong desire, very, again, they say, oh, we don't deal with, there's such a person, their habit, we get this kind of a habit of strong, desire like this, Again, some person, oh, that person is very, full of arrogance, don't better not deal with, just shun in the society, We better, not deal with such a person, We will get, suffer, We will suffer like something like this, So there are many reasons, There are many, based on our reason, based on our, based on our projected reason, we then try to shun these people, right? We try to repel these people. But then the question is, but then the very real question is, by doing in such a way, by dealing in such a way, it will never help oneself, it will never help other, help other. This, right. And then why it does not help, it will not work. Why it will not work is because this will not only work for oneself, also does not work for other, because our wish, what is our wish? Our wish is really, for example, from the perspective of someone who is practicing love, who is practicing compassion, who is practicing bodhicitta, altruistic mind, the mind of enlightenment, then dealing in such a way is discouraged. Doing such a way is discouraged because it will not help in any way, both for oneself as well as for the other. right? Why it does not help other is because by doing in such a, by dealing in such a way, causes the obstacles, for the other person, to make transformation. There's no basis for transformation in the other person, because other person feel I'm neglected by the society, I'm not accepted by the society. In early, right, person feel discouraged. So one's act of doing such a way is discouraging other people to make transformation, right? Because we branded other person as not useful anymore, unuseful, right? Creator of the problem, creator of the trouble, right? Creator of the trouble, right? So this will then makes a true obstacle for making a true transformation, that they become the contributing members of the society, because we all want happy society, right? We do not want miserable society. Nobody wants to live in a miserable society, right? Miserable, the society full of the problem, trouble, right? Right. So if we expect to have a very harmonious society, very happy society, very peaceful society, right? Peaceful society, the more less is the problem in the society, we are happy. The greater is the problem in the society, we feel unhappy. So this is our nature, this is our basic nature. So, right. So therefore, just from the perspective, right now we are, although we are talking from the perspective of that, one who is practicing love, compassion, and bodhicitta. But even from the, we leave this, for example, like spiritual, the, spiritual angle aside, just take at the very fundamental human level, right? Fundamental, basic human level, For example, for example, if we take ourselves as an example, right? As an example, we are not perfect, right? We make mistake, right? If we do such kind, it's very possible, right? We are not perfect in any way, right? In many ways, So we are bound to make mistake, Just if we make some, for example, like big mistake, then you are branded as a bad man, bad guy, right? You are branded as bad guy. Then other people, try to accept you in this, does not accept you in the society, right? If other people does not talk to you, does not deal you in a positive way, what do we feel? Right? We feel sad. Similarly, because everybody has a feeling. Everybody wants a happy life, right? Everybody has a feeling. When it comes to the feeling, it's same. Maybe physical description, maybe like some have white hair, some are blonde, some are I mean they're different hair color. But again, these are not that important. The important thing, the very important thing is when it comes to the feeling, it's same. Emotionally, right? All wanting happiness, do not want suffering. Right. So those people oppressed by kind of, engaging in kind of, oppressed by strong negative actions. Instead of dispelling them, we accept them. We need to take the special care of that person, right? Because the reason why we need to take the special care of that person is because of that action, right? Sometimes, what really happened is, when somebody, I mean, they may be due to some related with the history, history. In the history, when some person, kill a lot of people, kill a lot of people, that person is branded as hero, right? Very, very shining, great hero, great actor, like this, right? But then, on the other hand, this person really, for example, now, take an example like, like, for example, like Saddam Hussein, right? Osama bin Laden, Hitler, Stalin, all these, dictators. Around that time, Cole may be branded as they are great, the great, the great leaders, the great leaders. But then, from the other hand, it's really become the object of compassion, object of compassion, because of the act, very act, such a, negative act, heavy negative act. Then what happened? They have to experience the result, negative result, in a heavy negative result, not, very can be seen in this, in their life, in their one lifetime. If not, then they are going to experience the result in the future, in the next lifetime, right? For example, when we see, somebody really, going through a tremendous amount of, physical pain or, mental pain, but because when we see this, this, experience, we really feel compassion, right? So similarly, because of this act, they are going to suffer, right? Suffer. And then, so these people, instead of, shunning from the society, instead of, instead of abandoning them, we say we really take the special care. We really, mentally, we develop a compassion for them. In practical level, we help them. Physically, we help them, but physically we help them. In practical level, we physically help them. Then at mental level, we meditate on the compassion of these people, right? Compassion of those people, right, who really commit a heavy negative, karma, heavy negative action. And then it says again, and heavy suffering, and again, those people who are really going through the pain and physical pain and physical mental torture, mental suffering, and physical suffering. Mental suffering, is very clear. Many of the many unnecessary problem. Really, this many problem that we create. Many of the problem we create. Because mainly this problem comes into existence because of our, how to say, because of our, outlook, mental outlook. Many of the, problem comes because of the negative outlook. Therefore, to strengthen, to enhance our, happiness, enhance our happiness. So it's very important to understand the functioning, the qualities of the positive emotions, positive emotions, right? So Many, for example, like, as we discussed, the sense of loneliness, that depression, the stress, and then there are kind of what is called as, is low self-esteem. But where do this come from, right? Where do this is very, very clear. It's very clear that all this comes from, different kinds of, emotion. Finally, all this comes from what? All this, the root is, we already explained, in the three principal aspects of the path that we discussed, sometime earlier. All this come from self-cherishing, self-cherishing and what is called as self-centered attitude, right? Self-centered attitude, or self-grasping, grasping, because we think, oh, I want happiness, So sometimes, the medical scientists, medical scientists, they say, those people who are very prone to heart attack, they use the mind all the time. Reference, is being much made to the first person. Right. So for this person, we also, we don't say, oh, that person is, suffering from that, the sense of loneliness. We don't abandon them. Right. So those, again, depressed person, depressed. So we don't shun them, we accept them, as a part of the, members of the society. If you try to shun them, then, they feel they are outside the society. This will make them worse, the situation worse. And then we have, again, we talk about also the physical suffering in those people who have, pain, Right. Like, terminal illness, suffering from, AIDS, suffering from kind of the cancer. There are different kinds of, the cancer, right? And then sometimes, when we, they're coming into contact with this, person, oh, right. Oh, we don't, go near the person. We also get the disease, right? As we told, because when we talk about the meditation on the meditation which involves giving your happiness and joy to others, accepting upon yourself the suffering of others, because sometimes people have misunderstanding and the notion that if I visualize taking suffering of others, I will get sick. Right? I will get sick. Right? Actually, there is no sick, there's no sick. There's no sick involved, So, because in reality, if you think like this, I get sick, in a way, we are not ready to accept, those people who are suffering, right? Who are going through suffering. In negative actions and heavy suffering, right? Heavy suffering. Now, when I see all these things, I hold rare ones, such rare ones. I hold such rare ones so dear, very dear to my heart, as if I had found a really precious treasure. Right. Now here the question is, right, what is the purpose? Right. I don't know if we in the United States here, if we in India, people, when we go to the, sometimes here, we need to get the permission to visit the hospital, right? And this. Also when we, go to some kind of prison, we need the permission to go inside the prison, right? In India, it's very open, people go to hospital. Yeah. Right. So people going through tremendous amount of suffering, the pain and suffering. Pain and suffering. And then also mental suffering, right? Mental suffering, physical suffering, and also this, oppressed, tortured by their own, kind of negative, action, action, right? So these are easy, right? It is easy to find, people, really going through a tremendous amount of, mental torture, As we do see in the television, people, they, it's very clear that people going through, suffering, right? There's a news, also sometimes like commit suicide, all these things involved, right? So, and also kind of, different kinds of, pain, for example, kind of pain, and also the problem like, here, the starvation problem. So we have, in this world, there's enough problem. Whenever we, do see, always, see the news talking about, this problem, that problem, right? So we know there is the plenty of suffering, human suffering. Right. But here it says, here it says, I hold such rare ones. It's saying, this, kind of those people oppressed by, the heavy negative actions, heavy negativities, and also, oppressed by suffering, heavy suffering. These are not, easy to see. We see, when you go to hospital, we see plenty of people suffering, crying out of pain, right? And also people, doing a lot of, negative, negativities. This is not, not that easy, not that difficult to see. It's very easy. Right. But here, the use, rare ones, I hold such rare ones. It is saying, right, I need to hold such a person as very rare, as if I found a treasure. Right. Because we consider seeing them, because we consider, although it is not difficult to see, but we consider seeing them as so, seeing them as so hard to find, where is, rare ones. Because what happened is, because although not difficult to see, not difficult to interact with such a person, right? Come into across with such a person. But here, because it is so hard to find, because why it is so hard to find is because just as if you found the treasure, we feel so happy, we feel so happy. Similarly, that's why they say, as if you have found the treasure, right? Just as you found the treasure, just as you get delighted when you found the treasure. Similarly, when you see such a those person, we consider, we hold them as so precious. In what ways they are so precious? Because when you come to meet with such a person, when you come to interact with such person, these people, interacting, because of the interaction, because of the meeting with this such a people, that you are able to cultivate a bodhicitta. Right. So because bodhicitta is so precious, so from that perspective, the cause which give rise to bodhicitta is so precious, so hard to find. Because the result is so precious, the cause must necessarily become precious, right? Because it is due to the interacted, as a result of interaction, that you are able to arise within your mind a real altruistic mind, the real bodhicitta, a love, the feeling or emotion that you are able to expand towards all these beings, all the sentient beings, right? Now, for example, right, just take an example. In a very busy world, right? In the busy world, you have sometimes the people have difficult having a hard time dealing with the neighbor, for example, right? For example, having a hard time, or someone to whom you really feel dislike, right? We really feel dislike someone to whom we really feel dislike. We take this an example, right? Now, because we feel, oh, the neighbor, giving you a lot of hard time, right? Oh, somebody is giving me a lot of hard time, right? Right. So, for example, just take an example, right? So there are two ways. You feel, the neighbor is really, how to say, annoying you a lot. Somebody really giving you a very hard time, all the time, really. There are two ways to escape from that. There are few ways, few ways. There are few ways to escape from that, what we call as torment, or somebody is, for example, bullying you, right? So, or whatever reason, you are not good, friendly in relation, not in good term, not in term. So, in order to escape, right? In order to escape, or in order to stop that act, act of somebody trying to take advantage, trying to giving you a lot of annoying feeling, a lot of hard time. So in such a circumstances, if we are given or provided with such a circumstances, such a situation, what we are gonna to do, what we are going to do, how we are going to handle, right? Now, how we are supposed to handle, right? Either, so, the best thing is, the move to other place, right? Now here, why, somebody may, develop a thought, I am moving to other place. I'm moving to other place. Because I no longer cannot accept this, the problem. I no longer am able to accept the problem. So there's no other option than for me to move out to some other better place. Like this is one. Or one may think, I'm going to move out. I'm going better to move out because if such a situation continues, it will not good for both myself and the neighbor or any person to whom, like. Right. So from the perspective of, one who is really practicing mind training transformation, really, interested, really, the willingness to practice the mind transformation, to really go through the mind transformation practice, really mind transformation practice, the essential practice of someone, right? Someone who is really, looking forward or really wishing to practice the love, unconditional love, unbiased compassion, and then really, practicing the bodhicitta, altruistic mind. In such a, in such a kind of, situation, under such a situation, when such a situation happens, one is discouraged moving out. One is discouraged to moving out. If one is really practicing love, compassion, altruistic mind, one is encouraged to stay in that place. Right? Because staying in that place itself is the very purpose of doing mind training. If we move out if we try to, having, citing, oh, I have this problem and I have that problem, I have difficulty in dealing with the neighbors, with this person, that person, right? And then trying to moving out, to other person, you are not, you have, we have given the golden, we have given up the golden opportunity, we have, we really missed the golden opportunity, right? Because we already discussed few times, right? Where does compassion come from? Right? Where does compassion come from? Right? Where does compassion come from? And where does suffering come from? Right? Where does love come from? Where does bodhicitta come from? First, right? For example, love, the so-called we call as unconditional love. Unconditional love come from the, come from some basis. We cannot say, oh, I need to develop the love for the tree, love for the mountain, love for the rock or stone, your boulder. We cannot say, right? Love is directed towards the being, sentient being. right? So that love, now the basis for that love comes from someone whom we consider as giving you a lot of part time. Right. And also, you know, also the you know, the loving compassion. Where does compassion comes from, right? And also the compassion again, you know, the compassion again comes from, you know, especially, you know, relating to this verse, you know, compassion really comes from those persons oppressed by suffering and heavy negative actions. The compassion really comes from, you know. Right. And then, as we discussed, you know, as we discussed earlier, suffering has many qualities. Right. Suffering has many qualities. What kind of qualities suffering has? Right. Normally, we try to keep distance. You know, we try to keep distance. We we try our very level best to, you know, to get rid of suffering, to overcome the suffering. Right. But once we face with the suffering, but once we come across with the suffering, again, what we are supposed to do, right? By meditating on suffering, because it is your enemy, it is somebody who gives you a lot of hard time, who really gives you a headache. That person gives you the suffering. Right. So when that person gives you the suffering, then we can meditate on the suffering, right? As we discussed, you know, in Guide to the Master Shantideva says, suffering had many qualities, you know. Suffering dispelled arrogance, sense of arrogance. When we, you know, when everything is going okay, you know, very, you know, when everything's very nice, very beautiful, you know, we are okay, you know, we feel completely, you know, independent, you know. I can manage everything, you know, no need to rely on other. When we get sick, you know, even, you know, for example, some people, you know, no matter how physically strong one is, mentally strong one is, once we are, for example, just take, once we are lost at the sea, once we are lost in the forest, in the thick forest, you won't have to depend on others' kindness, you know. Right. For food, you know, we need to depend. Somebody need to, you know, come and help you, you know. So, right, when everything is good, we you know, we feel, you know, okay, you know. But then the point is, the very bottom line, the point is, when we go through suffering, tremendous amount of suffering, we feel the sense of arrogance is dispelled. This is our experience tell us, you know, our experience very, you know, sure experience tell us, you know, we never, normally, for example, we are okay, you know, all of a sudden when we go to develop some kind of physical pain, you know, excruciating pain, we call it excruciating pain, we become very humble. So this suffering dispel arrogance. Suffering also helps you to develop compassion, loving compassion, because based on your suffering, how much you are suffering, how much you are tormented by suffering, based on your suffering, we feel that sentient beings are in the same situation, just as like you, how much you are suffering. Based on your suffering, you extend that kind of suffering that to other sentient beings. Other sentient beings are similarly going through that experience, and And based on that, you want to separate the suffering of the other sentient beings which arises because of the based on your own understanding of suffering, right? This one. And then, well, where does all this, the suffering come from? Where does happiness come from, right? If we do not want suffering, then we come to understand that all the suffering arises from negative action. All the happiness come from positive actions. So therefore, we come to understand the causes, the main causes for accumulating. The main causes for accumulating the suffering is what? Suffering is engaging, committing negative action. And so therefore, we want to get rid of the negative action. All the happiness comes from, all the happiness, joy and happiness comes from positive actions. So we want to accumulate, we want to create that cause to gain happiness, joy and happiness, right? Beautiful. So these are the benefits of suffering, meditation on, reflecting on suffering. Right? So therefore, there's simply no room to think that, oh, I'm suffering, they say, I'm suffering that way. There's simply no room. There are many good qualities that one can appreciate, right? Many good qualities, wonderful qualities. So therefore, sometimes people say, oh, don't talk about suffering. It aid to the extra suffering. It gives you extra suffering. Yes, if you try to look from the different perspective, beautiful perspective, like the meditation, the reflection, the suffering, this really helps, This really helps, because without suffering, one do not understand the flavor of the happiness, the joy in happiness, right? Because it is you, for example, if you have the physical pain, like excruciating physical pain, which is caused by, for example, like renal stone, we call kidney stone, or hepatitis, So somebody going through the pain caused by hepatitis, I was told it's very excruciating pain, and also kidney stone, right? Also, when pregnant woman giving birth, they say very, very painful experience. When the pain is being reduced, when the pain is pacified, when the pain is being pacified, these pain are pacified. Only those people who go through their suffering will understand, get the flavor of how painful, and also when they get out from that pain, how blissful it is. They will experience, right? So like this, so those who go through suffering, they also come to understand the flavor of the because they had the flavor of the suffering. They also come to taste the flavor of the happiness, right? And then, so if you try to move from other place, not decline to or make up the mind to remain in the same situation, we have missed all this wonderful opportunity. And then not only this, and then what happens is, if you go to some better area, right? Better area, and also the very important thing is also the patience. Patience, right? We talk about the patience. Once, loving parents, one's father cannot provide you the patience, mother cannot provide you the patience, one's loved ones cannot provide you the patience. If there is someone who really give you the practice, allows you to practice, it is your enemy. It is one's enemy. It is one's somebody who really giving you a hard time. That person really teach you the patience, really go through the practice of patience. One, if we are really able to make an effort, this person is so grateful that it helps you to create tremendous amount of merit, tremendous amount of unimaginable merit. And that unimaginable merit comes from that enemy, someone to whom you consider as, giving you a hard time, a lot of difficult time, right? So remaining under such a situation, right, difficult situation, for us with with your neighbor giving you a lot of hard time. If we are really practicing love, compassion, right, altruistic mind, then there are a lot of good things that we can learn. There are a lot of good things that transformation takes place because of such a situation, right? We call transforming adversary into the fortunate, transforming the difficulties into the advantages, right? So these are what is called real meditation on transforming adversaries into the advantages, good things, right? And then again, as we said, the patience. We move to some other better place, and you cannot be. There's no time for patience. Your practice of patience is also, we miss the opportunity to practice the patience, right? Again, the practicing the patience. So yeah, on the one hand, very, very important, very important. But sometimes, it's explaining very, right, pretty easy, when putting into practice, this is what makes matter. Right. And then, so the reason why I say practicing patience is very important is because somebody, there are three kinds of patience. Somebody harm you physically, verbally, mentally. Just when somebody physically, verbally, mentally harm us, just as somebody harm us, if we try to retaliate, if we try to give a response in a negative way, both will suffer. Both will suffer. Both sides will suffer. This person, because this is what we call as vicious cycle. Other person do the same. Right. Just take the example of the great the yogi like Milarepa. Before he committed he committed with a very grave crime, right? Like grave crime, killing almost 35 people. That's pretty pretty heavy, negative. So then his mother sent him to learn the black magic, right? And then as a result, he eliminated all the he called them as giving a lot of hard time for all his family, right? But then the act of the great the Milarepa's act of the act of what is called as revenge solve the problem? It will never solve the problem. It hasn't solved the problem. So therefore, but he's pretty smart, He was pretty smart, He understood the things that, right? He developed a sense of real, kind of remorse. He went to, I think another master, Yungdong Toge. He went to Yungdong Toge, right? He said, Master, how come, when I eliminate the one enemy, there are two enemies coming, the enemy look almost endless. When I eliminate two, four come. When I eliminate four, 8 will come. Right. So like this is a very, the reality, law of cause and effect, law of cause and effect, So like this. So if he try to, somebody harm me, and then if he try to, do not retaliate in a negative way, not retaliating in a negative way, what we call as one patience, patience. Because once we, retaliate, negative emotion, is definitely involved, the hatred, the anger is involved. What is the function of the anger? The function of the very anger, the very function of the anger is that which is the potential to harm and to destroy, to destroy. The function of the, the only good quality of the anger is that the only, the bad quality, the function of the anger is that it knows how to destroy. It only knows how to destroy. It does not know how to bring gathering, reconciliation. In the anger, there is no reconciliation, right? And then we have another patience, somebody, harm me, right? So rather than retaliating, I'm accepting the pain and suffering. Master Shantideva beautifully say, right? Master Shantideva beautifully say, if we learn to accept the smaller suffering, we will come to learn to experience, learn to accept the greater suffering, right? Slowly, right? If, however, we are not able to endure the small suffering, how we are expect to accept the greater suffering? Then what really happens is when those who are unable to accept the smaller suffering, when they are faced or encounter with a much greater suffering, they are totally shattered, lost. They're totally lost and shattered, right? So therefore, in order to accept, really, in order to try to accept the greater suffering, then what happens is we also accepting the patience. With learning to accept the patience, there are no more complaints. Because many of the complaints, we complain, right? Because we have no patience. We have no patience to practice. We do not practice patience to practice. So therefore complaints come. If you practice patience, then there's no basis. There's no basis for complaints. Many complaints. Master Shantideva say, there is no anger like, there is no sin like anger. There is no sin like anger, and there is no fortitude like patience.
没有任何的罪莫过于臣，罪恶莫过臣，难行莫胜人。没有一种罪过像恨那么恶毒，也没有一种羞耻像安忍那么难行。
So, through patience, through patience, we also get a lot of advantages, a lot of benefits. And then it also helps you to create tremendous amount of, tremendous amount of this merit. And what time? 11:30. I see. So then, trying to remain in a how to say problematic situation, a difficult situation, we remain rather than running away from that, right? Because it allows you to develop compassion, it allows us to develop love, it allows us to practice patience, it allows us to also complete tremendous amount of merit. Right. So finally, it is the enlightenment, the complete Buddhahood, perfect state, the most blissful state. This most blissful state comes from love, unconditional love, the compassion, the patience, the accumulations of tremendous amount of merit. All this comes from, the basis that this very remaining in a difficult situation, become the very basis for which helps you to perfect, to merit for 200 years. Even at the very practical level, it really helps. Right, like this. And right, if we, then if however somebody, not that actually interest about, talking about the love, the compassion, the altruistic mind, then there is no other option than to moving out, just, trying to, to keep distance, from those who you believe are giving, the problem, a hard time. And it's better to, the evade, what we call as evade. But again, these are not long lasting. These are not lasting. For example, right, from my, for example, the two river, right? In between there are one river. There's a green, very beautiful place, green pasture. I am already, for example, here on my side, at my side, it's already good, very nice place, good place, right? Then on the other side, there's another, another place. If you got it? Huh?
Yeah.
I say, there's another place. On my side, there's one, I'm living on the same place.
问你，然后在我们这边呢，我们住在这边。
When I see there's a pleasure over there.
然后我们看到对面的话有一个
Right, there's a pleasure over there.
对面呢有一个乐果在那边。
Then when I move there,
然后呢，我们搬到那边的时候，
there's no pleasure.
然后没有任何的快乐。
Right. Again, you know, I already there. I find no pleasure. Right. Again, I move to another place.
我找不到那个快乐，我们想说另外一个地方可能会更好，我没有搬到另外一个地方。
So therefore,
因此说，
this very example, you know,
告诉我们，我们不停的
in many of the situation, we feel, you know, oh, other side is always beautiful, you know, not realizing how beautiful is your own side. Right.
对面可能会更好。
So mainly,
在这样寻找，
my bottom line is,
师父说，
in order to deal with the situation,
为了去面对 这个情境，
much depends on one's outlook, right?
往往在
External factors, of course, you know, maybe 20%, 30%, of
或
course.
者说20%、30%，
But
会有一些
you know, makes the effect. External factors definitely makes the effect, you know, up to 30%, 30%. Much depend on one's mental outlook, right?
真的更多的是取决于我们自己内
Much
心。
depends on mental outlook. Again, I'm stressing. Again, I'm emphasizing. You know,
强调
we can discuss, we can explain, right? We can discuss, we can make explain. You know, but again, the very bottom line is we need to understand, right, things. We need to understand all this. You know,
我们可以讨论，但是
all this teaching.
我们可以讨论的，
But fundamentally,
但是最重要的是我们要去了解，
how to put into practice.
了解。最重要的是我们可以去了解这些教法教授，但是最重要的是我们怎么样子把它付诸实。
How to put into practice, right? So that's pretty difficult, right? That's pretty difficult.
非常困难。
That's pretty difficult. Now, again, you know, we say, you know, citing, oh, this is very difficult. It does not solve, you know, it won't, you know, it won't be effective, you know, if you cite that's, you know, difficult, right?
它也不会有任何的不会令我们非常的有效的去实施。
Right. So, what really to make your mind, our mind, you know, make familiarize with teaching as well as our mind familiarize with the practice.
要对于这些教法的内容非常的去熟悉。
The very
然
main
后呢，也令我们
the main thing is
修行
the main thing is
付诸行动的
we really meditate. We need to meditate, right? And also we need to habituate with the meditation. Habituate.
要非常的
We need to meditate. We need to habituate with the meditation, and we also need to come across with such a situation. Then, yeah, then it begin to affect your heart. It begin to affect our heart.
在这个情
It begin to affect our heart, you know.
面对这个情景，它一定会慢慢的对我们自己的内心开始产生正面的影响。
We need to, as we said before, right? First, we really need to meditate, right? To gain the conviction and to face with such experience, to encounter with such experience, you know, such difficult experience.
这些烦恼的痛苦的情境，
If you don't do this, then what really happens is, you know,
如果我们
the problem would arise.
那
The
当
problem really
如
would
果我们这
arise.
样子做的话呢，我们的问题一定会产生。
What kind of problem?
什么样子的问题？
Right. Normally, sometimes also this problem also, may face with me too, right now I'm teaching very nicely, beautifully, I can present the teachings very nicely, beautifully, right? But because if I do not follow, like meditation, habituated, encounter with this difficult situation, then what really happens is when it comes to the welfare of mind, when it comes to the welfare of mind, then difficult. Then difficult, all this, what I have, explained, all this problem like empty space, empty sky.
然后呢，当事情发生在他身上的时候，如果他没有办法去面对的时候，当发生在自己身上的时候，那
a true practitioner, right? We call someone a true practitioner. In what ways we call someone true practitioner is, for example, right? For example, like, when everything is okay, when everything is very good, nice, for example, I'm wearing, the monk's clothes, I look like, some dharma tags, holding, the mala, then you can meditate, just like, reciting the mantra like this, right? This is dharma, yes. But how can I be guaranteed that I've tamed my mind? Right. I make some contribution in my mind. I've made some transformation at my mind. Right. When we are really faced with problem, a true problem, problem, a true disaster, a true tragic incident, when we are faced with true tragic incident, under such a situation, if we are able to remain calm mind, if we are really able to remain calm mind, if we respond to the situation in a very positive manner, in a very skillful manner, you are not disturbed, you are not influenced by the factors that you are involved in, that we are involved in, by the other factors during the very, during the very kind of, a tragic incident, when the tragic incident, at that point, then if you are remain calm mind, or really, how to courageous, there's a sense of courageous, a sense of inner strength during the very difficult time and tragic incident happened. That is the best judgment. This is the best guarantee that you have tamed, that you have made some transformation at the mental level. Right. Otherwise, in normal life, I can be, like people can call me a good practitioner, like reciting some mantra, and then reading, some texts, doing some kind of meditation, right? All these are, we don't say, we are not saying these are dharma. These are, of course, dharma. But the real strength of the dharma is determined when we are going through a hard time. Right, hard time.
自己不幸的这些事件上的时候说。
As there's a very there's a very funny the funny saying in Tibetan.
西藏话的话有一个很有意思的。
When the tragic incident happened right in front of you, right in front of our head, normally, in normal way, if we just assume, or take up as the life of the practitioner, right? When we are happy, when things are okay, then there's no problem. We also can we can also assume, or take up our form as a practitioner, Dharma practitioner. Right. And then when the tragic incident happens, ahead of us, we really, scream like the worst, making scream. Right. So like this. In a situation where, in such a situation, difficult situation, very difficult situation, if we are able to give others victory, if we are able to give others victory and gain, if we are able to accept defeat and loss upon yourself, if we are able to do that during tragic incident, difficult incident, you are real hero. We are real hero. We are real practitioner, true practitioner. Right. Otherwise, when the difficult situation arises in me, right now, I can teach in all this, I cannot be, this act alone, cannot convinced that I'm a practitioner. Only when I face with difficult situation, if we are able to keep calm mind, the inner strength, a courageous inner strength, only then I am called as practitioner. Right. So anyway, these 4 verses all telling about these things, all telling about these things. When we face with the problem, trouble, we do not shun the bad people, Right. Again, as I discussed, yeah, we can call somebody enemy. Somebody a bad guy. Somebody a butcher. Thief. A thief, the robber, right? And then the cheater, or the murderer. All these many people, right? They are different, We cannot despair, we cannot, how to abandon, rebel. Or these are, no more use, these are destroy the society. Right. For example, as I said, the criminal, right? For example, somebody who committed a crime, that person, because that person is branded as criminal, right? Because of that reason, we cannot reject, because as a person, is that person human being or not? The first question is.
当我们这样子
If that person is a human being,
要问
if that person is a human being, that person is a
这位众生是不是一个人？
that person has feeling.
如果他是个人的话，他们
That person is sentient being or not? That person is sentient being. Right.
是有情的众生。
If that person is sentient being is someone who you include in your meditation, right? Compassionate meditation. So that person becomes, but that does not mean that person's action is right. We cannot justify that person because that person committed a wrongdoing. So when it comes to the action, we we need to his or her action is not right. Action is wrong. Because that person becomes the object of compassion does not justify that the action is good. Action is wrong. From the part of the action, we completely oppose. We go against the action. We oppose the action. But as a person is a human being, he deserves love, compassion. So it is your object of compassion.
他们作为人的这个层面来说，他们是我们修习菩提心和慈悲心的对境。
Right. So therefore, sometimes we called.
我们对他们慈悲，并不代表说我们认同他们的行为。
And then, for example, there is sometimes people branded in Time magazine. They put a Buddhist terrorist. There is no Buddhist terrorist. There is no Muslim terrorist. So long as somebody become the no Buddhist terrorist, right? Because why there is no Buddhist terrorist, no Hindu terrorist, no Muslim terrorist, no Christian terrorist. These are people make it, right? Once you become a terrorist, you are no longer a follower of the religion, right? So anyway, when it comes to the practical, so it's very important to sometimes practical, right? This practical. For example, when it comes to the humanitarian service, Christian community has done a maximum. Christian community really brought a tremendous amount of benefit to the entire world. So now in some centers, Buddhist centers, they are doing right. Physically involved, helping, you go to the hospital, because the hospices, they set up hospices these days, to give the, how to say, spiritual advice, spiritual instruction for the dying person, right? For many people who are sick, for ill, and then for the prisoner, they give the spiritual advice, spiritual advice. For the dying person, those who are patients, terminally ill, they really take care of them. So these are wonderful, really wonderful. They're practical, putting things into practical. What they learn. Right. So sometime, I saw one the articles, they try to especially during the coronavirus, some humanitarian service, for helping, right? Yeah. So this talks about helping, as we discussed, mentally, mentally meditate, including all those oppressed people and those suffering people in your meditation, and need to take this, but in practical level, physically, we physically help them, benefit them, right? So right. So then the teaching become very perfect. There is both, because there's both, really, effect at one's heart as well as there's a practicality involved.
在我们内心里面会有起到作用，在我们实际的层面上，对他人也会起到作用。
Okay, now I think it's 12:30. 5 minutes. Any question? No question.
有没有问题可以提出来？Zoom 上的同学如果有问题的话，可以在 LINE 上面提出来。
Venerable.
I see.
Can we also like last time?
Huh?
Can we like last time we do a chant?
Jim，
Ella 你有问题吗？
我有一个问题想要问
OK， 你
Venerable。
等一下。
Just wait.
他能听到。
我可以在 Zoom 上面问吗？
就在 LINE 上面问。
这 Venerable 听不到啊。
Oh, you're
我
welcome.
把我的那个放 speaker。
啊，你说什么？
我有放 speaker， 他能听到，你就问。
我就在这个 LINE 上面问。
对。
Okay. Venerable.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Okay.
I have an altar that I do offerings every morning and evening. I do my morning and evening prayers and prostration, mantra. But sometimes I just want to offer incense. But during those days when I only offer incense to the Buddha,
Oh, yeah.
I feel extremely guilty
Okay.
that I didn't do the prostration, I didn't do the mantra, I didn't do the prayers. I feel like this is really not it's really a negative emotion for me. How can you help me with this?
Do you understand her question?
Yeah, she is not doing prostration, right?
Yeah, she said usually she was offering water, prayers and all that. But some days she probably doesn't feel like to do all that, so she just offered the incense and she felt maybe guilt.
Yeah. You're right. I see. Yeah, I got. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. This one. I see. So this, so this sometimes happen. Yeah. This sometimes happen. This is nature, not only you, for many people. So, sometimes we do water offering, right? And this, can happen, but then if you doing all these things, very good, very good. These are all for the accumulation. These are very good for the accumulation of the merit, and then before doing all this, normally these things, normally if someone is practicing, usually this thing physically, or verbally doing is very very nice, very good, as a practice, the order. First, we do the kind of refuge, going for refuge, and then going for refuge. Then going for refuge and generating altruistic mind, bodhicitta, and then like meditation on the for immeasurable, for immeasurable. After that, for immeasurable, then you visualize, we visual. Then for example, like these things are included in the 7-limb practice. We call 7-limb practice. We are included in the 7-limb practice. A 7-limb practice. Then make some supplication or prayer, and then right. So this is a brief, but then the what you are doing is very, very good, very nice, very good. But while doing this, while doing this, it is also very important, to infused, how to say, all these things should be motivated by the motivated that why we are doing this, we are doing this for the benefit of all the sentient beings. Then it's really become very powerful, powerful practice. One can make this, powerful practice, as I said, if this, there are two ways you can make all this offering, for the benefit of oneself, for that I can have good future rebirth, everything goes like, of course, very good, but the merit, that you accumulate is very limited. If you do this, with the wish to, achieve the liberation, this liberation, again, very good, very good, but the merit not as vast, But if you do this out of, the wish to free all beings, sentient beings from the suffering, this now especially, can be especially very powerful. Right. And then this, thinking, become, you get habituated with this kind of thinking, and then, you become, we become habituated. Once you are habituated, then, it can become a part of one's life, Then you don't want to miss, if we miss, we feel sense guilty, That's very good, but what you are doing is, because it, because usually there are two ways of getting, guilt, the guilty feeling, the sense of guilty. One guilty is, you are doing all the time, you are, you are doing this all the time, but but not strongly motivated. Another one is you get the guilt, when you miss the, that, then you are feel strongly motivated because you get habituated, right? So like this.
Can you say the second one again?
The second one, if you, second guilt arises, when you really, how to say, the motivated to free all sentient beings, with such kind of motivated wish, because you are doing this offering motivated out of this, So this maybe motivation makes, in the beginning, as I said, two kinds of guilty, One is just, because of the act itself, just, acting, we are doing this, for a long time. Sometimes, feel guilty, sometimes we feel unhappy, when you are doing something, for example, sometimes some people, do, clean the window all at one point of time, if they don't do this, we feel unhappy, right? So similar like this, this also can happen like this. And the another guilty is, as I said, because of your motivation mainly makes you guilty, the motivation. but both guilty are very good, very good, very nice. This guilty is good, very nice, not a bad guilty, very good guilty, right? Guilty, and especially the guilty of the latter one is more powerful. Right, like this. So the second, doing this kind of thing, need in order to sustain the second one, for example, you are doing offering the incense, making offering. If you if we just how to say, if it should be always if the act is strongly motivated out of altruistic mind, then this kind of act need to sustain and make it sustain and make it also stronger. Right.
So the key part is the motivation that one needs to motivate by altruistic mind.
Yeah, that's right.
Even though it's simple practice.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Or doing the full practice, it doesn't matter.
Whatever, but it just need to be motivated
so
by.
Not necessarily have to do the full practice. For example, offering water, prostrate, prayer. But most important is if one can be motivated by the altruistic mind, even just a simple incense offering. It's also okay.
If you are doing there are 7 limb practice, if you are doing 7 limb practice as usual, then all these 7 limb practice must be motivated out of the altruistic mind, right? However, if you are not doing all these 7 practices, but maybe have no time, not much time, but doing the selected one, then the act, that act should be motivated out of altruistic mind. That's right. Yeah. Right. So the important thing is, the motivation, altruistic motivation is very, very important. Any act, dharma act should be motivated. Then it really becomes, something alive, meaningful.
这样的回答清楚吗？
Right.
I will follow your guidance and practice.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
大家别人还有其他的同学还有什么问题吗？没有的话，我建议我们一起念一下这个说心法。We chant the.
Oh. Yeah. Just wait.
有没有这个法本？没有的话呢，我刚才已经发到这个 line 上面中文的说心发送。我们大家一起念一念，多念几次就背下来了。背下来了才好，这样打坐禅修的时候才能才有东西修，不然那怎么修？
Oh, just wait. Finding.
然后师傅的这个视频呢，我都录下来了，我会把它发到师傅的，他有一个 YouTube channel 上面，我回头上传了之后呢，我会发给你们。如果你们有些觉得这个 chanting 好听的，你可以自己也录一下。
This last time chanting, people know, right?
Yeah.
We
do it again.
No. Last time chanting, you remember?
I remember.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Then yeah. Okay. Tani Simji Tamji La Yishi Nobu Le La Pe Tenji. Can you follow? Dani Simji Tamji La Yishi Nobu Le La Tenjen Drube Samba Yi Tatu Jeba Zimba Shu Kando Sudan Tobe Tse Dani Kune Mi Shi La Samba Tabai Chodo Jeba Zimba Shu Chela Kundo Ranyu La Tojin Yemo Gemata Dashe Marun Chebe Zende Tene Doba Shu Rashi Nyebe Semcheni Didon Tabe Se Rije Tetan Teba Shin Nyeba Kave Chinzi Sho Tala Shen Ye Chado Ki Chego La So Yani Be Kyongara Le Ba Keka Shen La Biwa Sho Kala Da Ye Pen Da Ba Rewa Chewa Kan Shi Shindo Mere Neje Shinye Tamba Tawa Sho Dorna Ngwe Tan Yuba Yin Pende Mana Kula Ma Ye Ne Dan Do Ye Gu San We Da La Lim Ba Sho Te Da Gu Jan Chue Ye Ki To Be Ti Me Ma Ban Shi Chue Gu Yu Ma She Be Lu She Me Chi We La Tu 전주 숨지는 거지. 막이 반에 기고지. 기와냐 밤에 봐야 건데 배워줘. 양다 따와는 거지. 막이 봐. 기와냐 밤에 봐야 건데 배워줘. 기와대 이거도 몰라서 남아서 이루기는 거지. 같은 산에 기와라쇼. 기와대 기와서 있어. 그래서 거기 간다고 뭐죠. Ну, это интересно, это make me watch it, это поможет. Анжеги, Зунга, Лос-Анджелес, Okay, thank you. Everybody. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
场里我们看可能会跟你们有如果我们要讨论的话，我们可以排在网上面，然后5分钟一个故事。OK。 你有个5分钟之后呢，他会跟你们继续讨论一下，如果你要怎么样。谢谢大家。
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you very much, Venerable.
谢谢你。
Quickly. I have the way the Bodhisattva. Oh, and then have 8 person. That's it. Oh, that's it. This is the way the Bodhisattva. I thought you were doing some other work. Actually, when you talk. Some in the class, some the word, this side is enough. Slowly, very nice. No, I was looking at it also when you were talking about the pandemic patient. I find the chapter patient. Oh, I see. So that helps. Oh, I'm going to try to memorize the chapter of patience and also chapter 8, chapter 6. Chapter 6 and chapter 8. What kind of chapter 6 patience? Chapter 8 is education. Samantha, but talks about self-exchange, self knowledge, right? In that chapter 2. Yeah, so I want to memorize it. Memorize the whole book? Yeah. Oh, I have 2 versions. One is translated 5 words each verse. One translated 7. I think